Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Killing Me Smalls podcast. I'm your host, Mike Small, along with Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Keith is, in my opinion, I say it all the time, the top reporter in the city. If there's a tough question that needs to be asked, it's always going to be him. He catches some heat sometimes. We joke about that, but I love that he asks it because he is a great reporter and a great friend. Keith, welcome back to the podcast, my man.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Love having you always. So the 76ers are the number one seed in the East with about 17 games to go. They came off a neat 7-point victory when you had a blowout and you had to bring your starters back in. They beat the Brooklyn Nets last night. You wrote an article this morning saying you weren't terribly impressed. You want to elaborate?
I mean, the thing about it is, this was supposed to be the game. We've been talking about this for weeks that we were hoping that this was the game, benchmark game. Yeah, national TV. They brought in they brought in a whole bunch of people there. I mean, it was just for what? I mean, we learned that the Sixers could hold off their backups. That's what we learned. Now, again, the Sixers were beating them by 22, something they were supposed to do. But at the same time, it was a benchmark, and we didn't get it. I mean, we don't know. Like, going into the playoffs, you still don't know if the Sixers can match up against the Brooklyn Nets, right?
Well, let's talk about that. So you're right. We learned nothing last night, really. If the Sixers were at full strength and played the Nets at full strength in a playoff series, who you picking based on what we know and don't know, and why?
I'm picking Brooklyn. I mean, okay, so all right, I'm gonna ask you a question.
All right, now let's dig into it.
No, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Okay.
So you have three players,
Mm-hmm.
and you have three players on Brooklyn. Who are the three players you're going to guard?
Well, obviously Kyrie, KD, and Harden.
Okay, so you're going to guard them. They're still going to get their shots, right? They're still going to get some shots. But then who's guarding Joe Harris?
So here's what I would do. I've actually given this a little bit of thought. So I was going to ask you this question. So since you asked me, I'm going to give you my answer. Then you tell me. Seth Curry can't start. It's either going to have to be George Hill or Matisse. And what I would do is I would have Simmons on Harden. I would have Matisse on Kyrie, even though, look, he was on him yesterday and Kyrie still got his, but he really had to work for him. And I think Tobias guarding Durant with Embiid helping out, right? And I think, Danny Green is a serviceable player on defense for sure. So I think, but the question that I would throw back to, so I think the Sixers could do a reasonable job that way. But who's guarding Joel? And how are they going to guard the Sixers? Right?
Man, first of all, you don't pick, I love Tobias. Tobias is having a heck of a season, but Kevin Durant is the best player on that team.
He's going to get
have
points.
Tobias
I'm not saying
guarding him.
Tobias is locking him up.
You can't have, but you can't. I love Tobias. I love Tobias. Great player. But to me, I don't think that's a fair, my thing is, you may have to do something crazy, just throw Embiid on them, right? And have how they did before. Remember how Tobias was covering centers? You may have to do that.
Cover DeAndre Jordan. I mean, why not?
He was covering Marc Gasol, and when they played Toronto, so you may have to do that. I get what you're saying with the who's going to guard Embiid. Now here's the problem.
I will say this: I think the Sixers have the best chance of anybody in the NBA to guard those three guys. Maybe the Lakers, I guess, Clippers, but nobody in the East can guard those three. And the Sixers, I think have the best chance to do it.
Well, you got to realize the Milwaukee Bucks now. The Milwaukee Bucks have Drew Holiday. They have Giannis, and they also have what's the guy they just picked up from Houston Rockets? Oh man.
PJ Tucker.
Yeah, PJ Tucker. Now PJ Tucker is a serviceable defender, and I think they picked him up for that. I mean, again, is he PJ Tucker from a couple years ago? Was he struggling this year? But when we're talking about being a defender and he can hit threes. Now, see, I love Matisse too, but the problem is if you have Matisse and Ben Simmons on the floor at the same time, right? If you have them on the floor at the same time, now what are they going to bring you on the offensive end? That's the problem right there. Now, the one guy we're not talking about is George Hill.
Well, that's what I said.
George Hill.
You could
Yeah,
go George Hill on Kyrie.
yeah, you can. But the thing is, like my thing, like I get what everybody's saying about okay, the big three has only played 7 games together, but something tells me that they're sitting back and laughing at all of us. Like they'll have an open run or they'll have a practice, and then the next day they'll have a game and everyone's sitting out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I know a game and a practice is completely different, but I think that when it comes down to off the court chemistry and all that other stuff, I think it means a lot. And I also think that this year, because of how condensed everything is, we're starting to see guys who have injuries who are staying out a little longer than normal. So with that being said, it's kind of like they're not the only team doing. Look at the Lakers. I mean, look at the Portland Trailblazers early on. There were a lot of guys who were out longer. So I think that yes, they need to have some on-court chemistry, but I find it hard to believe that these guys aren't doing stuff like when no one's watching. You know what I mean? But
So let me I definitely want to go back to that. But before we move on there, answer my other question. How do the Nets match up against the Sixers?
defensively,
Defensively.
I mean,
Last night was not any indication of what they could do. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's true. Like the defense, their defense is like, I mean, the best defense is a strong offense. And when you talk about Brooklyn Nets, what I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, I just think that when you have, we're not even talking about Blake Griffin, but I think when you have that much firepower, the guy who's going to kill you is going to be the Joe Harris guy because you're going to put someone on him that really may not should be on the floor. Like, okay, you're going to say,
Danny Green. I mean, Danny Green could guard him.
I think Danny Green can guard him, but I think that you're going to have Danny Green because Danny Green's one of their better defenders.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have Danny Green on maybe a more high power guy. Yeah, that would be great if Danny Green's on him, but I think that we're going to see like a Seth Curry or a Shake Milton on him. That's what I think, man. That's what I think. Now maybe if you put George Hill on him, yeah, of course. But a guy like Durant, the thing about Durant is he has such a mid-range game. He's bigger than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But Embiid, I think if you put Embiid out there in space on him, that could be a tough matchup. You know what I mean? Because he's not like a backup kind of banging type of guy. So that's the problem. Now again, they lose a lot with LaMarcus Aldridge. They lose a lot with LaMarcus Aldridge. So, and what I mean by that is with him leaving because he's like a pick and pop type of guy. So they lose a lot with him.
Yeah, that hurt. That hurt them because I don't think Blake Griffin's got a ton left. He can definitely help them. But I think the bottom line is now if I'm looking at the other side of the basketball court, who's guarding Embiid? And, Durant doesn't like to work on defense. And if he's going to guard Tobias will make him work on defense. I think that, who's going to guard Ben Simmons? You know what I mean? I just think that the matchups, I don't think the Nets are a clear-cut favorite. And I'm not fanboying out on this because I'm pretty, me, I'm pretty straight with you. I think it's a better matchup than a lot of people think it is. Would I pick the Sixers? I think it's a coin flip, honestly.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. They got to play the game. The playoff basketball is completely different.
But if it's close, them only playing 7 games together might hurt. And Steve Nash never coaching in a regular season, much less a
I'm
playoff.
not going with that, bro. Nah.
You're
Let's
not
cut
going
that.
any of that?
Stop.
Are we
When Phil
fighting? Are we
Jackson,
at war right now?
no, I'm just saying this. Listen, that's the biggest like joke when people say that to me, and I'm not calling you a joke. So Phil Jackson was like known as not a really good, no one heard of him. So they give him great players. All of a sudden, the Bulls win what? So they win 6 championships, right? With a guy by the name of Phil Jackson, who no one like thought was a good coach, didn't know too much about him. Then he goes to the Lakers and he does the same thing. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, it's great to have a good coach, right? But you need great players. I mean, they got 2 MVPs, right? You need great players. And then not only that, let's look at his bench. So he has 2 former head coaches on his bench. So when I hear stuff like that, especially in today's NBA, you got to be like a manager. You got
Do
to
you
have a
agree
good
that Kyrie
relationship.
and Durant are the co-coaches, like Kyrie said before the season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like,
Right,
I
so
think
let
that's
me push
kind of
back
like
on you here.
I think yeah, I don't know if I want to go there
Yeah.
because I think that's like some people might take it. That's a shot on this guy as a coach. I think he's a better coach. I think that he's a better he's a better X and O's guy
Yeah.
than people are going to give him credit for, right? Like, you look at any team nowadays who wins a championship, all of them. I think Doc Rivers is a phenomenal coach. But in order for you to win, you got to have Hall of Fame type players. He has Hall of Fame type players, right? So, Doc had it. Um, Greg Popovich had it. Phil Jackson had it. I mean, when you go down the list, all the greatest coaches, they had it. So, and now I think nowadays with this guy, Steve Kerr, first year, not Steve Kerr, Steve Nash, a first year coach, it's kind of like we forget that this guy was a former MVP. We won it twice. So and when you look at him, you're not saying like, oh, this guy, like he doesn't come to the playground and you're saying like he comes to the playground nowadays and people are like, well, who's this soccer dude? They're not even thinking basketball. They're thinking soccer. Like, who's this Canadian, right? So, but then you look at it, he has skills. He's smart. He's very cerebral. He's better than you think. So a lot of times I think people don't give him credit because
No,
he's on that team.
I'm not disagreeing with a word you're saying.
Yeah.
But he's not coached a team in a game 7 of a playoff series. Now, we all saw Brett Brown do that. And I think a lot of people think that the reason the Sixers are a lot better this year, aside from a smarter roster, is they've got a better coach. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they have a better coach, but also you also look at when stuff start taking off in the positive way, who was like right next to Brett Brown? Or who was the guy like I mean, they stopped running his they stopped running his things, but Mike D'Antoni was there and they started having success a little bit. I know that was a 10-win year, but they were playing well, and then all of a sudden it was like Mike D'Antoni, too much Mike D'Antoni conversation. And then all of a sudden, like they stopped running his sets.
Okay, I
But
just feel like you and I are fighting today, and I'm good with it. So let me fight with you one more time. How good has Mike D'Antoni been deep into the playoffs?
yeah, but
You're talking about Sixers and Nets, game 7, close game. Do you feel better about Doc Rivers drawing up plays with Sam Cassell and the crew he's got, or do you feel better about Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni drawing up plays, despite who the great players are on either side? I'm just saying, I think coaching I don't think coaching matters as much in some sports. I think it matters in basketball. I really do.
yeah, well, here's my thing. I do think that Doc Rivers is a better coach. I mean, I think Doc Rivers is a Hall of Fame coach, right? I think Doc Rivers is a great coach, right? I think Doc Rivers has a great coaching staff. I'm not what I'm trying to say is all I'm saying is that a lot of people like just think that this guy is stealing money because he's in
No.
Brooklyn and he has great talent. So I'm just saying that he's a better coach. Now,
No,
again,
smart guy.
if
He's a smart
now,
guy and was a talented player. I just think, but he hasn't
yeah,
done it before.
yeah, he hasn't done it before, but I think that I don't know. He has a lot of talent, man. He, he has a lot,
They do.
and we'll see. I mean, let's put it this way: if they lose, if they lose, it's going to be one of the biggest upsets, and because of like they're going people are going to criticize them. People are going to say everything you did was wrong. You should have had the guys playing this and that. They're like the overwhelming favorite. And even after last night, I mean, they took Kyrie out of the game with like 9 minutes, a little less
Yeah.
than 9 minutes to play. And they had Timothy Lawalu and Landry Shamet just going to work, right? On guys who the Sixers thought were better, like Shake Milton and all them. They were going to work on them. And even when they brought their starters back, the tide it didn't go back to the Sixers. They were catching some of those J's too,
No,
right?
they held on by a thread. There's no
They
question.
had on by side. So even with that said, that like makes the Brooklyn Nets invincibility go up another notch. Like, whoa. When they I mean to people, you're thinking like, so you did this with your backups? So if the Sixers beat them, if I'm Doc Rivers, I'm sitting pretty because all the pressure is on Brooklyn right now.
Well, there's no doubt if all right, look, let's end it here. There's no question in my mind that if the Sixers were matched up against Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference Finals, Brooklyn would be the overwhelming favorite in terms of the odds makers, in terms of the media and everything else. I just believe that the team with the better defense always has a chance. And I think and I think the if Brooklyn had a decent defense, I'd feel a lot better about it. But they don't. They don't have interest in it. Mike D'Antoni's never coached defense. Steve Nash was not a great defender. He was a great player. So I do think there's something there in terms of winning a championship. Can they get in the finals that way? Can they get by the Lakers? Can they get by? Yeah, sure. But I'm not throwing all my money down. That's all I'm saying.
Now here's one thing I'm gonna say this. It's two ways of approaching this season.
Okay.
You have Joel Embiid once a game he grimaces in pain.
Yeah.
You right? He
After
has
that dunk
17
yesterday, looked like
after that dunk. He grimaces in pain once a game. He's playing in that knee brace. He done had more than like Doc Rivers believe he tried out at least 10 of them,
yeah.
right? You have Tobias Harris, who is playing with a banged up knee, right? He's just going out there like giving all that he has.
Yeah.
My question is, and I agree with you 100%, but there's going to have to come a point in time where the Sixers are going to have to think long and hard about some of these games because they may have to rest up these guys as well. Because see, they're taking. Don't get me wrong. What Doc is doing, he's hoping and praying that his team can get a huge lead, and then he can give these guys, his players, could play anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes, what have you. Take the night off. We're not practicing the next day. Just show up the day of the game. Well, I get that. But my thing is, in order for the Sixers to be successful, Joel Embiid has to be the tip top playing shape. He has to be in tip top health. And right now, as much as we talk about Ben Simmons being an all star, Tobias Harris offensively is their second best player. He is the guy that they go to in the clutch. And if both of these guys are banged up going into the playoffs, they're going to lose a lot. And
Look, I
especially,
don't care if
yeah,
Joel Embiid wins the MVP. I think he's got to sit at least 5, 10 more games.
yeah.
At least 5, 7 more games out of the last 17, 18 games. I got no problem with it. The thing is, can they talk him into that?
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. Because you look at it right now, he hasn't played in enough games because he missed 18. So now like when you look at it, he's not even like he's averaging the second most points in the league, but he's not listed because
He hasn't
he
played enough games.
played enough games. And so it's weird, man.
Well, there's two ways to look at it. I mean, the first way is that, Jokic has been amazing, but with Jamal Murray out, if they don't finish in the top 4, he's probably not going to get it, even though he probably should. And I do actually think they have enough talent to still finish in the top tier there. The other thing is if Embiid, plays most of the rest of the games and, just keeps having wrecking crew games like he does last night that are all over Sports Center, and, really dominant efforts, I do think the narrative will be enough to get him over the top, but it's not worth it. I don't care if he gets an MVP. I want the guy to be healthy going into the playoffs.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're ultimately judged by what you do in the playoffs. And, as great as Embiid and Simmons are, their tandem, they don't want their legacy to be as two guys who made, at best, second round exits in the playoffs. And I'm pretty sure the Sixers don't want that either. Like, Doc Rivers doesn't want that. Daryl Morey, this team has been in first place for basically most of the season from the beginning. This team has been in, like, everybody's kept waiting for them to lose, and they haven't. So you're right. It would be great to get this. And like, here's the thing. Is Joel Embiid the best player in the league? In my opinion, he is. He is. He just missed some games, and I think everyone knows that. Like, he's just been dominant this year. So with that being said, it's one of those things where um, I think that if they did take some time off, there might be some critics saying, "Oh, look at them missing time," but people know. Look at AD, look at LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at guys from other teams. They're all taking time off because this is a grueling season.
Taking some time lately.
Yeah, exactly. And like, we're all coming out. We're all coming out, and we're all saying, like, it's these injuries or this guy is hurt. Nah, a lot of times it's not. They're tired. And the coach is thinking about the playoffs. Because let's face it, Giannis could go out there and get 35 points a night and probably win a scoring title. But we're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks, a team that underachieved in the playoffs the last 2 years. They need Giannis to go far. And so it's the same thing for everything. Even down to George Hill. Like, could George Hill probably force it and come out there and play? He could, but it's one of those things where you want to be healthy. You don't want him to come in and then all of a sudden take a step back. So I think people may some people may be critical, but at the end of the day, we're talking about legacies here, and legacies aren't built in the regular season. They're built in what you do in the playoffs.
Is that a T-shirt? Legacies are not built in the regular season. I think Pompey. Let's get one.
Maybe we should do that, man. Get it like that. Yeah.
I like that. So, if we're looking back in, at the end of the summer, say the Sixers get bounced in the second round or make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and lose, or whatever, we're going to be looking back with the woulda, coulda, shoulda in terms of, going harder after Harden, going harder after Kyle Lowry, whatever. Where we are right now, did Daryl Morey do enough for this team, in your opinion?
Here's the thing. I think if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, I think you have to say, based off of what the stuff that Embiid is going through right now, and I know some people say finals or bust, but I think if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, knowing that they're gonna have cap space next year to go out and get people, right? People coming off the books. I think that is a successful season. Now, in regards to people saying, did Daryl Morey do enough? I think that when we talk about that James Harden deal, I think that some people may be a little unfair to Daryl Morey. And the reason why I'm saying that is because he did offer Ben Simmons, and he did offer Matisse Thybulle, right? So he offered those two guys who basically was a way better factor.
Turning that down for what they took.
Well, it's stupid, but at the same time, we got to realize something. This guy left us, and this is the guy who, talking about Houston, thinking Daryl Morey left us, and he wants us to give him our best player so they can leave us and go to Philly and win a championship. So I felt like there was a lot of interference that maybe they weren't being as forthcoming. I mean, as they weren't trying to help the Sixers out as much as they were. Like
Yeah,
they,
but at the end of the day, I've heard that, and I'm sure Tillman Fertitta had a lot to do with it, and I'm sure there's hard feelings. But at the end of the day, if you're a Rockets fan, would you rather have Matisse Thybulle, Ben Simmons, and 2 picks, or would you rather have the corpse of Victor Oladipo and a bunch of picks that you're going to get from the Nets, who look like they're going to be a dynasty for the next 3-4 years? It just made no sense to me, if all the reports were true.
it doesn't have to make sense. I
No,
mean,
it
it's
doesn't.
kind of like, like, well, what do they say? A woman scorned. And I'm not calling them a woman or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, a woman scorned, like, you know what I mean? You don't know what she's going to do. You know what I mean? You like if you
Let's
feel
go
like
with a
she was
person scoring. We're
or a
in
purpose,
this
yeah,
this
yeah,
time
a
these
purpose,
days.
yeah, yeah, a person, yeah, a
Yeah.
person scorned. Sometimes you get your emotions involved, and you're like, forget it. Now, I was out in Dallas a couple of days ago, and I was talking to people, from Houston. They were at the game, and they said they felt like they didn't think that Ben Simmons was a maybe a franchise player, right? Or they know he is, but not. They didn't think that him meshing with John Wall would bring out the best of him, of
I
Ben,
can agree
because
with you.
John has
I
Wall.
would have got rid of
You,
John Wall.
yeah, but
But but
then
but but look, Simmons is a lightning rod. We both know that, especially
yeah,
in Philadelphia. Um, he's not been great since the All-Star game. Says he has a lot going on in his life, but he was pretty good last night. Where do you stand on Ben? Is Ben a star? Is he an elite star, or is he just a really good player?
you know, I'm I'm big on Ben. I'm big on Ben. I mean, here's my thing with Ben. Ben Simmons never told us that he was something that he wasn't. Never did. And what I mean by that is when Ben Simmons is successful, it's not like scoring a bunch of points, doing all this other stuff, is when he's more of a utility type of person.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So with that being said, it's kind of sort of like, and then here's another thing. Like we've been asking Ben Simmons to shoot 3-pointers for the last 4 years. He doesn't do it. But we always get hyped up because somebody in his camp is always releasing videos of him doing it. And we're like, this is going to be the year. In the beginning of the season, Ben Simmons always says, that's not my game. That's not my game. If I'm open, I'll take it. But I'm more of a facilitator. So, I think that a lot of people look at it and they say, this guy is making 30 plus $1 million a year. He's doing what he's doing, but he's doing the same stuff he's always been doing. He's making that money because A, he was the first overall pick. Um, B, he was the rookie of the year. C, he was an all-star. So he continues to keep doing what he was an all-star. So he continues to although the numbers might not be there, he keeps checking the boxes. So he gets paid. But then all of a sudden, once he gets paid, people want him to do stuff that he hasn't done before.
So
Right?
can I give you my Simmons theory on why it drives people nuts? I don't think it's the shooting. I think the shooting is a cop out. I think people want him to shoot. He's not going to shoot. Who cares? I think that the thing that drives people nuts about Simmons are the things that he does that they feel are very controllable. When he misses 10 shots right around the rim when he's 6'10", just dunk it, or throw it in, or go hard to the rim, or just make the stupid layup. He misses so many layups that drives people nuts. And I think the other thing is when he gets um, deep into the paint, and he sees somebody there and doesn't feel like being aggressive, and he just turns around and throws it behind him. If he fixed those two things and still played defense the way he does and was aggressive to the basket, I love that couple of weeks where we're seeing those hook shots every game. The passes are outstanding, and if his turnover ratio stays pretty well, no one will say a damn word. It's those two things that everybody knows he could fix. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree, and that's where the frustration comes at.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that It's like, him and Joel, they developed bad habits when they first came into the league. Like when they first came here, they were the guy. Like there wasn't no one to say, "Hey, Joel, you're going to carry my bags. Hey, Joel, Rook, here, let me elbow you in the chest." Nah, there was no one to say, "Hey, Ben, you need to work on this." Now, coaches may say it, but when you have a guy and they come in and from day one, they get away whatever they want to. They're not held accountable by the people in there. They're going to develop these bad habits. Like I mean, they were treated like all stars before they were all stars. You know what I mean? So then you try to change them now. So it was like it was the process, and even down to Ben. Like whenever you talk to Ben about certain things, he was like, "Well, I never had to do it before. I was always that good." So he never had to do it before. But yeah, you're right. He misses a lot of bunnies. He does. And what he does is he drives the lane and he kicks it back and he jumps in the air, and then he kicks it back.
Mhm.
And that used to be a turnover going the other way. It used to be. Like it still is, but it
Mhm.
was like
It's
it
better.
was
It's better
yeah,
than.
it's better. It's better.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like Doc has gotten him to be a little more aggressive, but he still goes in streaks of that. And look, I think those two things are fixable, and I think if he fixes those two things, no one would say a damn word about 3-pointers or shooting because he's that good at everything else.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Mike. Like if you just look it up, and I haven't like taken the time to basically sit down and analyze it like each time. But it seems like to me a lot of times when we see Ben Simmons with these 30-point games and all this stuff, and everyone's like, "Wow, wow," then typically in losses. Like he looks spectacular. Now, again, if they're playing the Brooklyn Nets, the old Brooklyn Nets, right?
Yeah.
The old Brooklyn Nets. When he played them, we're like, wow, Ben Simmons is amazing. But there was no one on the floor that was better than him. These young forwards couldn't stop him. The guards were too small for him. But
Rudy
whenever
Gobert
they,
can't stop him.
yeah, Rudy can't stop him. But the thing is, even that, like, if you have Ben Simmons going out there attacking the rim, doing everything else. Well, he's not getting everybody else involved. He's
Right.
not doing the intangible things, right? And they tend to lose against good teams when he has those type performances. So, to me, and again,
So what you're
this is
saying
the,
is when George Hill's on the floor instead of Steph Curry and they can have another ball handler, it enables Ben to free up and either score or get somebody a basket.
yeah, but here's something else though. When Steph Curry, I mean, not when George Hill comes, I expect us to see Ben at a lot of like that point forward position,
Mhm.
or you know what I mean, a lot of that. Tobias sliding down, and George is in there running, doing what he can because he could shoot, he could handle. And I think that's what the Sixers are going to have to do in the playoffs.
That's what Brett Brown wanted to do in the bubble last year with Shake, but Shake wasn't good enough for that.
Yeah, and then but also it was one of those things. It started out where Ben was the point forward, but then all of a sudden Ben became the power forward, just like, this and that. And it just didn't work out. Like Ben's a guy who you have to let him touch the ball. You know what I mean? You have to let him feel and be like he's involved.
Well, Keith, we could go on for days. And actually, let's do it. Let's go on for another couple hours. No, I'm just kidding. Let's wind this thing down. I love when you come on the podcast. I love talking to you about the Sixers. It's always fun, always a good debate, always an intelligent debate. And I appreciate that. Appreciate your friendship. I wanted to throw something out there. As many of you know, my daughter has a brain tumor and is doing amazingly well and has decided to use her gift of health, which she currently has. We have to get an MRI every 6 months to give back to others. She started a 501c3 charity called Small Miracles. And to date, she's raised over $40,000 for kids with cancer, kids that are at Children's Hospital getting oncology treatment, chemotherapy. And she's gotten them iPads, gift baskets, all kinds of great things to brighten their day. If you want to be involved with that and read about her journey, please go onto the website. It's smallmiracle.inc.org. Or if you just want to donate $1 up to $1 million, whatever you want. The Venmo is at @small_miracles. You can follow me on Twitter at @realmikesmall. And Keith, where can everybody read your stuff?
They can read my stuff in Inquirer.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers.
Don't forget about that podcast.
Oh yeah, Locked On Podcast. I have to get you on there, man.
It's been a while. I'm ready. I need a guest spot.
Yeah, I need you on there. Yeah, next week I'm gonna get you on there definitely.
You can afford me, right?
I hope so. I hope so. If not, I'm gonna have to get the fake Mike Small.
Oh, don't do that. No, I will always clear time for you, my friend. Yeah, definitely read Keith's stuff. Definitely listen to his podcast and follow him on Twitter. Keith, thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, brother.
You got it. Take care, everybody. We will see you next time.